weak, running from the heat, but the beat beats coming alive. Let's get lost tonight. Lord, who's on my right?
Hello, wackos. Welcome to another episode of Without a Country. I am Corinne Fisher, your host. Thank you so much for joining me. If you are watching live on YouTube, thank you for your patience. Hopefully you saw my Instagram story from earlier today saying that I would be a little bit late today because I had to do an endorsement meeting, which reminds me that I also have to text my trainer. Hi, Tice. I am. Sorry, this is fun watching me text my trainer, but it's gonna be too late when the show is over. Anyway, you know, this is like on Two Less Lonely Girls when we used to do a research break. This is where I text my trainer, and I wish I could talk at the same time. Okay. All right. Got that in. Okay. Now we can concentrate on the show and not have any other distractions, hopefully. What is up, everybody? How has your week been? So, yes, I was late because I was doing an endorsement meeting at the Stonewall Democrats in the LGBTQ Center over on West 13th Street. That's where I was, just in case you need receipts. It was, you know, it's funny because they give time to speak based on polling. Obviously, I'm not polling because everyone refuses to talk about me. And you know, when they're polling, not everyone, I don't want to say everyone refuses to talk about me. I did a great interview with Bloomberg News that should be out soon. Obviously, Marsha Kramer had me on. I've done, you know, several podcasts, everything. So I don't want to say refuse. That's, you know, again, when you look at the actual time frame, I think we've made great waves here at Corinne Fisher for mayor. That being said, when we talk about polling, yeah, like it's a multiple choice thing when they say, oh, we're polling the people of New York, or these are the people who are polling. So if you're not including me in the polling, I cannot poll. Like usually they have other candidate. And other candidate right now, I believe is polling at 2%. So I just do take that as Corinne Fisher is polling at 2%, which is higher than some of the other candidates who are major players apparently. So that's right. I will here proclaim that I am polling at 2%. But anyway, so talking time was based on polling time. So I had 2 minutes to like convince this room of people why they should vote for me. And then obviously, like, I'm sure if you are a member of the Stonewall Democrats, you probably are pretty politically versed and you already have your selection. But I mean, I think in a space like that, or it's people who are really politically involved, especially when, you know, you talk about municipal politics, what you're trying to do is get them to rank you in their top 5. I think that's like, obviously I didn't state that because I want them to rank me, 1, but ideally you're letting them know like, hey, I'm someone who you can rank other than Andrew Cuomo in that top 5. And you know, all the voters in New York City should be ranking 5 people if they truly don't want Andrew Cuomo to win. Now I have my political strategist texting me, blah, blah, blah. Okay, anyway. So that's what's going on there. In 2 minutes, I felt like I did give, you know, it's hard in 2 minutes to convince someone that they should vote for you for mayor of New York City, but I feel like I did my thing. And, you know, especially in LGBTQ spaces, as I kind of said to the people in this club, listen, you know, other politicians are going to perhaps, you know, make promises that they're going to be there for you. And there are some, you know, candidates running who have been there for the LGBTQ community through legislation and through, you know, protesting, but they can't prove that they weren't doing it for votes the whole time. And I come in with a clean and pure track record of someone who has been advocating, protesting, fundraising for the LGBTQ community for literally no reason other than I felt like I wanted to. Like there was no reason. It did nothing for me other than I think that we live in a world where everyone should be treated with respect and have resources, and people shouldn't be getting kicked out of their houses because they came out of the closet as gay. Like that's what we're talking about. And so I was able to list, a lot of work that I have done in the community. I said, since I moved here, I've phone banked for marriage equality, and I've been a supporter for breaking AIDS, and I have raised tens of thousands of dollars for new alternatives for LGBTQ homeless youth, and all these things. And hopefully they understand that, I am truly someone who is involved in the LGBTQ community here in New York City, and that I don't need to make a promise that I'll be there for you because I have been there for you. Anyway, I'm just giving you kind of like a little insight like to what an endorsement meeting looks like. It's a bunch of people staring at you and being like, prove it, And then we were able to ask me 2 minutes of questions. So it's like, rapid fire. And some people ask, questions, everyone tries to, ask like a mic droppy question, like, prove yourself kind of questions. And I'm obviously very used to being asked prove yourself questions. That's the kind of questions they're asking. And I got a rousing, round of applause for when someone said, why did you start by running for mayor and not something smaller like city council? And I said, and I've been asked this question a lot. This is a question that I get asked all the time. And I think I've discussed it on this show. And I said, well, I'm running for mayor because the Democratic Party, we're in crisis mode right now. We're falling apart. We can't win. There is no time for me to go through all the steps to run for a city council. We need energy. We need a new approach, and we need someone who knows how to mobilize people. I can do all of those things. Okay, we've tried the other options that we had. And of course, someone brings up, Donald Trump. Well, Donald Trump was someone outside of politics. Why can we trust someone outside of politics? And I go, I hear you. I said, I think the election and certainly the re-election of Donald Trump tells us, it takes the temperature of America. It says America has told us now 2 times that they are sick of the status quo. That's what that re-election told us. And so while I agree with you, Donald Trump is not the kind of new I think many of us wanted. I said it is still reiterating the fact that people want something new. And so, you're sitting here asking me, why can we trust someone not in politics? Well, we've already learned we can't trust anyone in politics. So the only other option is someone out of politics. And I think the difference with me, Donald Trump was part of Hollywood, right? So already an area where kind of, Hollywood and real estate, 2 areas where people are also not trusted. I am, I'm from comedy, and not that you can trust comedians more, but like you kind of can, because we are so like, what you see is what you get a lot of times for comedians. We spend so much time talking off book, on microphones, on stage. Like you pretty much are able to track the kind of people we are, because it would be really difficult to hide it this long, like the thing with like Louis C.K., for instance. Well, if you've been watching his comedy the whole time, what he did shouldn't have come as a surprise to you. And so many people had that conversation. Like, so he wasn't hiding it. We were just taking it as a joke. And so for me, like there are hours of proof of who I am in audio, in video, live performance. So it would have been kind of hard for me to hide the kind of person I am. Obviously, when you give someone power, I don't think you can ever fully predict how they are going to act. You can, I can tell you that, I've had power before. There is power in being famous. Certainly around 2017, 2018, I had a great amount of media power. I think overall I was pretty responsible with it. And also in a time when I kind of only needed to be entertaining, I do believe that I took an extra step and tried to use the platform for good, both by helping people with their interpersonal relationships, and helping nonprofits and helping give voices to people who otherwise wouldn't have had that kind of reach. And so that's what it is. Running for office is very much, similar to, I imagine, what happens when you die and you reach those pearly gates and you kind of really, have a life review, and you have to constantly be asking yourself, what are the contributions that I have made to my fellow people so far? I mean, I hope these are the questions that politicians are asking. I don't know if they actually are, but certainly the questions that I'm asking myself. And it's not like I just decided like I should run for mayor and I'm the best, but I think we do deserve to see what it would be like if one of us represented one of us. And I think that's really the heart of my campaign. And yeah, so that's the conversation that I had, and I do believe we are in crisis mode, and I believe the elections, especially for Congress that we're seeing all over the country, reinforce the fact that people feel that we are in a crisis mode and we need something new. And if there's anything that I believe that that I have the ability to do is to make people interested in politics. I've done it with this show, and get young people and first-time municipal voters to get out there and vote. I have a track record of getting people registered to vote and getting them to vote for the first time. So many of you emailed me and said, the last presidential election was the first one that you've ever voted in, and it was because you listened to this show. And I think that's important. And I also just, have the ability to mobilize people to care about a cause or to fundraise or to do any of these things. And I've been doing that for over a decade. So that's a little bit look into endorsement meetings. It's interesting because I saw another candidate running for mayor who is, polling much better than me because he's, been in politics for many, many years. And again, or polling at all because he's been given as an option. And I think he's a perfectly fine person and not exciting, not different in any way. And someone asked him, we're familiar with your work here. We're, supporters of you because he's a left-leaning person. And you don't even have to be that left anymore, I think, to support the gay community and, just full transparency. It was a room of mostly gay men, so not trans, not lesbians, any of these situations or, not situations. But I think, these groups of people that I think might be deemed now in 2025 a little further left. It is weird, but I think in the gay community, it's kind of like being gay is almost just like a staple of if you're a Democrat, you support gay rights. And then it is considered a little bit further left to support trans issues. And there is even problems in the LGBTQ community itself of different letters in that not supporting each other, but there's infighting everywhere. So and someone in the Stonewall Democratic Club, which is a club that exists in many cities. This is just the New York chapter, the New York City chapter of it. And someone asked this other candidate, strategically, why should we endorse you and not other candidate? And it's so interesting because I knew this was happening, but it was just interesting to hear someone ask the question outright because all these endorsements, if you look at them and, people like to say I got an endorsement from this person, I got an endorsement from this group, this is exciting. And I guess it is, but please know that all these endorsements are exactly what that gentleman said. And I'm glad that he was so transparent, even though I know that was not the purpose of his question. He wants the endorsement of his club to be a positive reflection on the club. So they want to pick the winner. They want to pick the winner. They want to be able to say, we knew that guy was going to win. We knew that lady was going to, we knew that person was going to win ahead of time. And then furthermore, they want to pick whoever wins, not just to make them look good like they know, we support winners, but also, of course, they want to give the endorsement to someone who can then prioritize that club in the future when he or she is mayor. And so it's just all strategy. The whole thing is strategy. It's just a game of chess every step of the way. And so obviously, I'm going into most of these spaces being I'm not going to get the endorsement, but I think showing up shows character and going into spaces that are going to be tough and just letting people know I'm here and I'm running and everyone can laugh and everyone can ask these crazy questions to me and everyone can treat me like shit and everyone can give me less time than all the other people and you can make me speak last and you can do all this stuff. And you know what? I think that's actually whatever. Is it fair? I don't know, but no problem with it. Honestly, happy to be there, happy to be included. But that's what's going on. So when we talk about endorsements, it's this big thing. Endorsements are also just a part of the political machine, right? Now, if I get an endorsement from anyone, I'm posting it and I'm going to be excited about it, right? Because to me, that says if that group actually endorses me, that says they actually listened to what I was saying and they think that if I were mayor, I would best serve them. And they really listen to what I'm saying. But again, I think most of these people are just playing a game of chess. And I get it. I get that you want your special interest group to be doing well and your people to be supported. But if we're just all playing the same game, the game will never end. Like, I feel like I'm in the movie Saw sometimes. So that's my mayoral update of the week. And it was about endorsements, and I'm sure my campaign manager is going to be texting me furiously if he sees this, because I'm so definitely creating a headache for everyone by having these conversations on air. But I promised you guys that I would tell you what was really happening, and this is what's really happening. And again, I'm trying not to throw anyone under the bus by name. And please, like, I did give the name of this endorsement group. It is not specific to them, so that is what every group is doing. I truly do love and value the LGBTQ community. I don't need to say that here, though. You guys know that. You know my track record. Without me having to speak about myself and all my wonderful achievements. I roll. I'm just so sick of talking about myself. I mean, can you oh my God. All right. I also want to shout out all our patrons. Thank you for being a part of this financially. I appreciate you. I appreciate everyone who listens, but it is nice to get some extra funding, especially now when I'm not making extra money. So I want to shout out our long live our dictator, Hannah Pendergrass. You're a real one. You're always here. Thank you so much. I want to welcome our new capitalist pig, Connor Duff. And I want to welcome our new cutie, Echo. Thank you so much for being here. And it just dawned upon me this week. I know a lot of international folks were asking how to best support my mayoral campaign, because you guys can't donate money, and there's not a ton, and obviously you can't volunteer if you live in another country. It's very hard. And a way that you could help would be by becoming a patron of this show. It's extremely helpful to me because I'm on hiatus from stand-up for this entire campaign. And so I'm making a lot less money but also working way harder, which is, not the ideal combination that you want. Truly happy to do it. One of us needed to do it. One of us needed to be here. One of us needed to report back to everyday people. So I'm doing that. And I do think that it needed to be someone with a big mouth. So that endorsement goes to me. I'm giving that endorsement to myself. Big candidate with the biggest mouth that can't be reined in. This bitch. If you are still thinking of ways that you can help and you don't feel like you've been a part of it, but you want to be a part of it, become a patron of Without a Country for a few months and, keep engaging on social media. But also, everyone who's not from New York City, who likes to start every comment with I'm not from New York City, but I would vote for you if I lived there. Just, I would say, leave that part out. Just talk about the policy or something. We don't want to see a flood of people who aren't from New York City starting their sentence with "I'm not from New York City." But I appreciate your honesty. It's not dishonest. You don't have to say I'm voting for you. Obviously, if you live in Arizona, but just say, "Oh, cool policy" or something like that. Everyone who is American or an American living abroad, where to go to be a part of the campaign. That's CorinneFisher.com. And if you're in New York City, or if you're going to be in the New York City area this next weekend, Sunday, May 4th, is our next benefit for Corinne Fisher for mayor. It's called Politics Doesn't Have to Be a Drag. It's a spectacular show that's going to feature stand-up comedy by Christina Hutchinson, Emma Willman, one other guest who would be huge if we get her. I'm not sure she thinks she can do it, but I don't want to promise it to you yet. We're going to also have drag performances by Izzy Uncut, Jacqueline Hyde, and then Vicky DeVille. Izzy, from appearing on this show. She's such a wonderful performer and such a wonderful supporter of this campaign and of me. And I just love her so much. And just so good at drag. I've been all the times that she's given me an opportunity to speak for a couple minutes at her shows. I'm like, what a pleasure to be here. She's so talented. She'll be co-hosting the show with Jacqueline Hyde. And let me tell you, if you've never seen a show co-hosted by drag queens before, you've never seen a goddamn show, okay? Again, I credit my humor in part to drag queens and having come to New York as a teenager and having just spent so much time watching drag performances. I think drag artists continually you know, tell jokes in a way that like takes it right up to the edge, but doesn't push it over to a part where it's, you know, cruel. And I really love that about drag queens. They just push it as far as they can go. And then of course, Vicky DeVille, my longtime friend who performed at Guys We Fest, if you were that, you know, and I think Vicky's been on Guys We Fest, I think, unless I'm hallucinating. But yeah, just Vicky is just so wonderful. And I'm just so excited to have this treasure trove of performers. And of course, Christina Hutchinson, if you haven't seen her live, you gotta. And then I'm not performing, but I will be talking, you know, politics and, you know, blah, blah, blah at the show. Yada, 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 whatever. We're doing a benefit. I'll give a little chatsy. We'll talk about politics. It'll be fun. And, you know, I did some other interviews. Hopefully that Bloomberg interview will be out soon. That was a pretty in-depth one. Cool office building, free snacks. I liked it. You know, and that's right leaning. And I'm, you know, again, I'm like, okay, well, thanks for giving me the time to speak. So let's get right into the.
I mean, you know, you were talking about policy. I'm just jazzed on this. The thing we were talking about earlier, the policy that you kind of unveiled in that Bloomberg article.
Wait, you mean vacancy taxes?
Yeah.
I believe that it's on my website. If you haven't checked in, the policy is a lot more expansive than it was when I initially launched the campaign. But yeah, let's see. I think the vacancy tax is talked about in the small business section. If it's not there already, I don't know.
I'll be honest with you. Ever since Chris Vega brought this to my attention,
yeah,
my resounding thought was like, okay, I'll just vote for the first mayoral candidate that puts that at the top of their list, because I'm sure that would be great for me as a renter.
Okay, so what Mike is talking about is basically like a lot of, you know, people, landlords are leaving apartment units empty in New York City specifically because it's not because they don't have the ability, and this is specifically for rent stabilized units, I believe you're referring to. They don't have the ability to knock up the pricing where it would be worthwhile to renovate and, you know, and in shape to then get a new tenant. So instead they're just getting tax breaks for having these vacant units. Is that what that's what you're referring to?
Well, yeah, it's also dual fold to the point where no landlord is ever going to lower their rent as long as they have enough empty places to offset the filled places.
Correct.
Then they're not paying tax on the money that they're making,
right,
and they're not incentivized to lower it,
right,
to fill those apartments,
right. And so you want to do it, and so then, you know, the idea here is that I would, and this is not unique to me, but yes, I would instate a vacancy tax so that, you know, if a unit is vacant for more than, a lot of times it's 6 months, but I mean, when it comes to housing, I think you can do 2-3 months. You get taxed on that because they're really, you know, that the need for housing and specifically affordable housing, which rent stabilized would fall under, in most cases, is just, I mean, it's truly a crisis. You know, day one, I would declare a housing crisis if elected mayor, and I would also be doing the same thing with the vacancy tax for storefronts, because we see so many storefronts remain empty until some kind of a conglomerate comes in there and is able to take over, because they, you know, landlords would rather rent out the space to a conglomerate because they know that they will most likely have the ability to stay there for more than a couple of years, whereas the average lifespan of a brick and mortar small business renting the space is 3 years, and that's kind of long. So yeah, no, I mean, I think that's fair. You want to get people into homes. What's, you know, the only thing faster than building more homes is getting people into homes that are already there. And that's a huge problem. We have a lot of spaces. We have fully empty buildings here. And I mean, I think there's also something you can do where, you know, try to rework the law so that, you know, maybe they can up the pricing a little bit so they would have the money to renovate. You know, you can't just be like, you know, landlords bad forever, tenants good forever. Obviously, you want to be on the sides of the tenants, but is there something we can do here quickly? I think the urgency is the key part of this. And then additionally, What is the other part? Yeah, I mean, I don't know what else you wanted to talk about with that, but yeah, no, a vacancy tax. Oh, and my other part of it is like a vacancy tax is not a new, is not my idea. It's an idea that they've been trying to get passed for a really long time. It always gets clogged up and it never gets passed. There's one I think that's like clogged up right now that's been sitting there for 2 years without getting passed, and so obviously that tells me that people with money, I'm guessing the landlords, are financially incentivizing people to not let that get through. So you would then need to force that through. And how you would do that, I think, is something that you'd have to take a deeper look at once you see the mess that you're dealing with when you get elected.
How many big real estate developers have donated to you, Corinne?
0. You know that.
I do know that. That's why I'm asking, because it's like it's so few and far between if you look at the big donor spends on any of these candidates to be like, oh yeah, this is a person who I do believe will have my best interest at heart. We'll be looking out for the constituents. And as far as donor registry goes, you have to have the cleanest one of anyone in this race.
Yeah, I mean, there are other people who haven't taken from or claim that they haven't taken from real estate developers. I mean, mine is just going to be the cleanest period on donations because it's just all people. It's just all everyday people. That's it. I'm the only one I think probably who has just everyday people. I think that there's probably, as far as like who is like also like rich, like maybe like 5 people who are actually rich donated. So like we're talking like I'm not even taking money from like really any rich individuals. So I mean, if we're talking like a campaign of the people, that's why I also have less money, but not less money than everyone. There are like 2 people who are considered like viable candidates who are included in all this polling, and I know for a fact I have more money in my bank account than 2 of those people because the bank account information is public. So I just looked. And anyway, yeah. So that's what's going on. Great question, Mike. Thank you. Vacancy tax, very interesting. But yeah, no, we should never be rewarding people from keeping suitable housing away from the people of New York City, especially when we're going through a housing crisis. It's not ethical. It's not ethical, and it is exhausting. All right. Let's get into the enemy of the state. It's going to go to Pete Hegseth again. This guy, oh my God, he can't stop texting you guys. This is from NBC. All right.
Enemy of the state.
Oh my God, this guy. So info Hegseth shared with wife and brother came from top generals' secure messages. Hegseth has denied the information he shared was classified, but it was given to him on a system for sensitive and classified information, sources told NBC News. Minutes before U.S. fighter jets took off to begin strikes against Iranian-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen last month, Army General Michael Eric Kurilla, who leads U.S. Central Command, used a secure U.S. government system to send detailed information about the operation to Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, which then answers that question that everyone was asking, like, why was this happening on what was it? Where was it leaked from?
Signal.
From Signal. Like, why was it leaked on Signal? Because they're saying something else, right? Like they're referring to something else, or are they calling Signal the secure government system? Because so many people were like, that's not secure. Is Signal government secure? Because I mean, like, secure and government secure are different things. Maybe they still are referring to Signal, because they said everything in Signal is end-to-end encrypted. Because everything in Signal is end-to-end encrypted by default, the broad set of personal information that is typically easy to retrieve in other apps simply doesn't exist on Signal servers. Okay, we'll see. The material Kurilla sent included details about when U.S. fighters would take off and when they would hit their targets, details that could, if they fell into the wrong hands, put the pilots of those fighters in grave danger. But he was doing exactly what he was supposed to do, providing Hegseth, his superior, with information he needed to know and using a system specifically designed to safely transmit sensitive and classified information. But then Hegseth used his personal phone to send some of the same information Kurilla had given him to at least 2 group text chats on the Signal messaging app. Okay, so yes. So it was sent more securely. Don't worry, the U.S. government isn't as dumb as we originally thought they were. 3 U.S. officials with direct knowledge of the exchanges told NBC News. The sequence of events, which has not been previously reported, could raise new questions about Hegseth's handling of the information, which he and the government have denied was classified. In all, according to the 2 sources, less than 10 minutes elapsed between Kurilla's giving Hegseth the information and Hegseth sending it to 2 group chats, one of which included other cabinet-level officials and their designees, and inadvertently the editor of The Atlantic magazine. The other group included Hegseth's wife, his brother, his attorney, and some aides. And okay, let's do real talk for a second. I always think about that. Like, I'm sorry, people who are supposed to be classified with your information are telling it to their significant other and their friends. Like, they are. Like, when I tell my therapist something, I just assume she's telling her husband. I actually think she might not be, based on an email that she sent me recently, where, I can tell you. She basically sent me an email because I'm not in therapy right now because I literally don't even have time to be in therapy right now. But she'll, boy, will she. And also my therapist was on maternity leave for a while. And then I was just kind of like, let's just put a pin in it because what am I going to do? Talk to you about, kind of when I'm going through trauma, I'm on, actively, which I will call running for office trauma. I'm like, not even fucking with you. When you're kind of actively going through it, I don't feel a lot of relief in just telling someone the sequence of events. Like when my dad was like dying, I kind of just like told her in the beginning, kind of set up a plan. And then I, once he died, I was kind of just like, okay, he's dead. I don't need to talk about how I'm sad that he's dead every week. Like, I just need to give myself time and space and, do things in his honor and in his memory. So like I put a pin in it, like after he died, because I was like, okay, well, I needed the tools to handle his death. And I've already worked on acquiring these tools leading to his death because I had, several months that it was like impending doom. And then once he died, I was like, yeah, I don't want to sit here every week and be like, I'm sad that my dad's died because literally nothing else was going on. And that's kind of the same way that I feel about running for office. I'm like, I don't need to just like be like, wow, our system is so broken. And I don't know how we're all going to fix it because we really need to all be stepping up actively right now. 100%, like this moment, like yesterday, we need to be stepping up. But anyway, she's been like thinking of me and she knows I'm running for mayor, obviously. And so she sent me this email saying that her husband, somehow organically came across one of my videos. I do not know if it was mayoral or comedy yet. Might be mayoral because all the comedy ones I think I kind of put in the back unless it was like a Guys We Fucked one. And he showed her a video of mine. And she said I was like very awkward because I had to pretend that I don't know you. And I was like, oh, look at this lady. Really, really holding up the whatever. I don't think it's an oath that she took, but maybe it's an oath as a therapist to not talk about her clients. I was like, look at you really doing your job. All this to say, people who my information is supposed to be confidential with, I just assume that they're telling their girlfriend or their wife or their husband and a couple of their closest friends. Like, I just assume that. So it's it's not nice, but it's like, at least it's transparent that we know that government officials are yapping about really serious government information with people in their family. Like, I almost like, how could you not, right? Like, you shouldn't. Especially if you have a big mouth in your family. I don't know, though, but that just like kind of made me laugh because I was like, I knew that was happening. Obviously it was happening. Like presidents' wives, the secrets they hold. Come on. You're not going to talk about Yemen during Pillow Talk? Like, come on. Anyway, Hegseth shared the information on Signal, even though NBC News has reported an aide warned him in the days beforehand to be careful not to share sensitive information on an unsecure communication system before the Yemen strikes, according to 2 sources with knowledge of the matter. Like, yeah, if you're going to share confidential government information with your wife, like, at least just do it verbally. Oh, we live in such a technology age. You can't even give away government secrets in person anymore. Ugh, we're all on our phones all the time. No classified material was ever shared via Signal, said the Pentagon's chief spokesman, Sean Parnell, who called the allegations an attempt to sabotage President Trump and Secretary Hegseth. Appearing Tuesday morning on Fox and Friends, the Fox News show whose weekend edition he previously hosted, Hegseth said, "What was shared over Signal then and now, however you characterize it, was informal, unclassified coordinations for media coordination, other things." That's what I've said from the beginning. That sentence doesn't really even make sense. President Donald Trump tapped Hegseth, a former Fox News personality, for a job for which Democrats and even some Republicans worried he was not qualified. Now, in the wake of the revelation of the second Signal chat that included his wife and his brother, which the New York Times first reported Sunday afternoon, he faces calls for his dismissal even as Trump stands behind him. Pete's doing a great job. Everybody's happy with him, Trump said Monday at the White House Easter egg roll. There's no dysfunction. Hegseth, who was also defiant at the event, dismissing the reports, though not specifically denying them. This is what media does, he said, adding, "It's not going to work with me because we're changing the Defense Department, putting the Pentagon back in the hands of warfighters and anonymous smears from disgruntled former employees, and on old news doesn't matter." Okay. At least one.
He's talking about his aide. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I read it in like a weird cadence. At least one member of Trump's own party sees it differently. Representative Don Bacon of Nebraska, who is on the House Armed Services Committee, on Monday became the first sitting Republican member of Congress to publicly call on Hegseth to resign.
No, a member of the Armed Services Committee wants the guy who's anti-war to resign? Couldn't be.
It's all a conspiracy. I had concerns from the get-go because Pete Hegseth didn't have a lot of experience, said Bacon, a retired Air Force general. I like him on Fox, but does he have experience to lead one of the largest organizations in the world? That's a concern. A lot of stuff is a concern. The two Trump advisors, speaking on condition of anonymity Monday, dismissed the idea that Hegseth will be fired. There is no talk right now of removing or replacing him. We have been through this before, and as of this moment, it's not just something we are talking about, one said. The other said the idea something like this would force him out is not reality. The president still supports him. A former senior official in Trump's first administration who spoke on condition of anonymity, citing fear of retaliation, expressed bafflement at Hegseth's decision to share the information about the Yemen strike with his wife and his brother. "I can't imagine a scenario where national security officials would see fit to share sensitive details about policy and planning with family members who don't have a need to know," the former official said. "To do it over an unclassified messaging app is even more egregious." All right. So Pete Hegseth, you keep on keeping on, my guy. I also want to just bring your attention to a homework article. Too long to go over on the show, even on the Patreon. I think it's too long, especially because I'm keeping Mike late tonight. But it's from the New Yorker. I saw it actually right as I was headed out to the endorsement meeting. It's based on a year-long investigation that the reporter Sarah Stillman did, and it's called Starved in Jail: Why Are Incarcerated People Dying from Lack of Food or Water, Even as Private Companies Are Paid Millions for Their Care? And she goes over that it is kind of common, apparently, for people to be dying of starvation or dehydration in prisons. We talked, months ago about people dying from the temperatures in prisons, but now this is actually like access to food and water. So if you have time, I think it would be good to take a look at this article. I'm really interested in prison reform. So that's why I wanted to recommend that to you. Again, that's from the New Yorker. I can include the link in the show notes. And then moving on to the Wacko mailbag for this week, Wacko Elise just sent over a link to a Project 2025 tracker that I did not know about, which might be interesting for you. It's www.project2025.observer. And on it, you can kind of go through all the objectives of Project 2025, and you can see what they've started on, what they're working on, what they haven't gotten to yet. And again, they told us exactly what they were going to do. And I guess we thought it was a joke, but it wasn't. So go check that out. And now we can move on to GUUURL as I take a sip of water. Do we have that? We tried to play it, that drag queen saying girl. We don't have it anymore.
I think it's on. Is that not on your board?
No, I didn't think so. I mean, you used to play it.
Huh.
Yeah, because I was looking for that drop because I hadn't heard it for a while, and it's not there.
If you give me a minute or two, I'm sure.
I miss it. I miss the sound of it in my ear holes. But anyway, well, Mike's looking for that. Let's get into one of my favorite stories of the week. And by favorite, I mean didn't like it at all. The Motherhood Medal from motherjones.com. These are just some incentives that they're giving us womb havers for, to make babies. I would say the best incentive you could give us is to make men more fuckable, but that would be too much work, I guess. So this is Trump. I know everyone's talking about treat mothers better, support us more financially, all that too, but also stop letting men we're talking about indoctrination. I'm like, stop letting them get indoctrinated by, I don't know, Theo Vaughn. But Theo, again, I would still love to appear on your show. Let's duke it out. All right. So Trump may soon offer a motherhood medal, an idea popularized in Nazi Germany. Fun. There it is. There she is. I'll be known as the fertilization president, and that's okay, the president has said. All right. Well, on Monday, the New York Times reported that the Trump administration is mulling a suite of initiatives aimed at encouraging Americans to have more babies. Some of the suggestions for these programs came from Pro-natalists, a loose network of activists who believe that the humanity is basically doomed unless people have more kids. But realistically, and this is something that is part of the proposal for New York City municipal government as well, but let's just work towards universal childcare. Again, I am this is something that should be a priority, right? So
disagree.
You disagree?
Hard disagree.
Why?
Because I just don't. I mean, my stances as a parent.
That you want to have your kid at home 24/7?
I just don't want anyone else indoctrinating my kid. And
okay, then you don't have to send your kid to daycare then.
So I'm just saying it's a universal daycare.
Okay.
Someone's going to be in charge of that, in charge of what activities are being done or what's happening.
But this is your same argument for school, though. We're not undoing school, Mike. But again,
that is kind. I mean, we're literally dismantling the Department of Education.
Right.
We might be undoing school, Corinne.
But it's a misconception that the Department of Education is school, and I think a lot of people kind of think that. But school still exists with or without the Department of Education, and a lot of the things that the Department of Education does are for students with special needs and different and who need a different curriculum than the quote unquote average student in America. But I mean, again, universal childcare, I think it's thing that a lot of people are interested in. A lot of, there's really very few households where both parents don't have to be working. And I think that women, would be a lot more open to having children if they didn't have to choose a career or parenthood. I wouldn't, but, it'd be a nice option. And then, if it's if a resource that's available, and if you don't want to use it, you don't use it. I also think you should be able to. I think we should have universal health care, but I guess if you want to pay for private, I think maybe you should also be able to do that. It's about choices. I think. All right, let's go here. Let's see. To have more babies. Some of the suggestions for these programs came from pro-natalists. We're doomed, blah, blah, blah. A few weeks back, I hung out with some of them in Austin near their conference, which is called Naturally NatalCon. Honestly, I want to start going to things like that for this show. That's my dream, to expand this show so that I can do on-site investigative reporting, kind of the way the Free Press does, and make the little videos about it and actually get press passes and stuff, which again, I don't want to give the Trump administration too much kudos, but they have really expanded being a correspondent to the digital world in a way that no administration has done before. And I think it could possibly be good. It'll certainly be good for them because they have so much power digitally on the right. And I think they recognize that online. They have so much power on TikTok and Instagram and even X. So they want to give those people press passes. They want to empower them. I think it's really smart. And again, if we could create more spaces in the digital world for Democrats, I think we'd be in a good space. It can't just be Pod Save America, guys. We got to get more big podcasts on the left. I'm trying here. To say that most of the conference goers leaned right would be an understatement. Some of the topics under discussion were the ethics of gene editing embryos to endow them with the desired traits, how having more babies could save the West, and why most women should forego careers to be mothers. Some of the pro-natalist proposals that the White House is said to be considering include are practical in nature, issuing a baby bonus of $5,000. You probably heard about this, but they were going to give women a $5,000 financial incentive if they had a baby, which is kind of like, what's that paying for? Couple months, reserving 30% of Fulbright scholarships for applicants who are parents or at least married, and offering classes to women to help them identify the most fertile times in their menstrual cycle. And let me just point out, when you look at the stats, who is voting Democratic? It is college-educated women, okay? That's like overwhelmingly. So, and I also think, especially if you read the book, All the Single Ladies, as I've talked on this podcast before and on Guys We Fucked, when single women are known to be really politically active and to make a big impact. And so it makes perfect sense that they will try to weaponize the programs available against us and punish us for not being what they think a woman should be, because we're not voting for them anyway. And so okay, now we're going to also punish you. Makes sense. Again, of course, I disagree with the policies, but when we're talking about strategy, no one does strategy like the Republicans, because that's a good strategy. It's not a good strategy to get us to vote for you, but it's a good strategy to say fuck you for not voting for me. Got to give credit where credit's due. Well, I pressed the hate Satan button, but it didn't come through. Did you hear it, Mike? No?
No, I had the try now.
Hail Satan!
Well, the comedic timing was all messed up. All right. Other proposals, meanwhile, seem aimed at changing cultural attitudes toward childbearing. A prime example of this is the idea of bestowing a special medal on mothers of 6 or more children, which is interesting to me because I'm on the, super feminists perhaps maybe are anti-mom, but most people are still very pro having kids. Most people still want to have kids. I think it's more we changed it so that not having kids is not as crazy as it used to be, but being, motherhood, even on the left, is still very much, we support it. We think it's cool. I think a lot of people who want it and don't have it are upset about it. So I don't know where all this reframing is coming from. Yeah, having 6 or more children, yeah, no, most of us aren't doing that anymore, but that's more of a reflection of the times that we live in. This suggestion came from Malcolm and Simone Collins, a Pennsylvania couple who seem to have appointed themselves heads of the pro-natalist movement and were the belles of the ball at NatalCon. And isn't that the dream, to be the belles of the ball at NatalCon? The medal was part of a collection. Can you bring up the NatalCon website on here, Mike? Was part of a collection of draft executive orders on pro-natalism that the Collinses recently sent to the Trump administration. But the Collinses can't take full credit for the idea of a motherhood medal. France has issued a similar medal since 1920, but the idea really picked up steam when Adolf Hitler first conferred a similar honor on German mothers of 8 or more children in 1939, calling it the Cross of Honor of the German Mother. Naturally, Jews were not among the 3 million women who received the medal between 1939 and 1944. The fascist Soviet Union leader Joseph Stalin followed suit, offering a similar medal in 1944. The highest honor went to mothers of 9 or more children, though mothers of 7 and 8 children were also recognized. Since then, the Motherhood Medal has been especially popular in authoritarian regimes the world over, including in Hungary, Kazakhstan, and Russia. As I noted in my piece, the Trump administration has shown signs of enthusiasm for a pro-natalist agenda. Doge head Elon Musk, a father of 14, posts regularly on social media about the need for Americans to have more babies. He has also promoted NatalCon on X. Vice President J.D. Vance has proposed the idea of a weighted voting system in which the votes cast by parents would be valued more highly than those by the childless, which I believe is something that, Christina and I talked about this. I don't know if it made it to air, but this is where I was actually able to change a Republican's mind at the MAGA rally that I went to in Latrobe, Pennsylvania. Is there no NatalCon website, Mike? Oh, wait, what is it?
There is. I was just letting you get through the article.
Wait, what does it say? Can you read it to me?
Natal Conference. We are living through the greatest population bust in human history. The future belongs to those who show up. NatalCon 2025 was held on March 28th. You want to get conference updates? This is the post by Elon that they were talking about.
Does it say like about us or something? Is there like an about? I love an about us page. Our work, our mission. It's black and white and red are the colors.
All right, the speakers. Jack Pasabic is there, so I'm out.
Wait, who's that?
Just some online talking head type guy. Oh, the Raw Egg Nationalist is going to be there.
Who?
At Baby Gravy 9 is the guy's handle.
Okay, do you know who that you're just being silly?
No, I'm saying this is a real person they have on their website.
Yeah, no.
That they're promoting as a speaker.
See, I honestly, like, Mike, I don't know if you've been jotting down all these kinds of people that I want to get on this show. I want to get one of these people on the show. I want to talk to a pro-natalist. Like, I really, like, I want to see, like, they think the human population is doomed. Like, what do they mean?
Well, I mean,
because to me,
birth rates are plummeting. We've
but I
about
also
that on this show.
Yes, but I also think there's a bit of a white nationalist vibe here. I think they specifically are trying to encourage white people to have babies. I got to be honest. I mean, it just really feels like that.
I'm looking at the list of speakers, and there's multiple brown people on here, so I don't see how that tracks. But
sure.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because we've never seen brown people who are white nationalists or people of color who like betray their own people.
Sure. I just don't think a quote-unquote pro-natalist, hey, let's have a lot of babies, that's targeted at white people. I mean, look at the numbers on that.
I think there's a little nudge towards white people. I don't know. It just feels, again, all the Nazism, like, it's like, oh, it's like,
okay, I mean,
Hitler was also
it's
like...
very convenient for Mother Jones to bring up those examples and not talk about the fact that South Korea is offering cash incentives for people to get married and more cash incentives for people to have a baby.
I know about that.
Japan is offering cash incentives to have a baby. There's Switzerland is going to pay you if you move there with a family. I mean, the
Switzerland one I wasn't aware of. The other ones I was aware of.
Around the world, we are experiencing a massive population
bust.
bust.
And around the world, we're also experiencing a rightward movement, though.
Okay, I mean, regardless, population is decreasing.
But do you think perhaps they're making it a little bit more hysterical than it actually needs to be because all the world is also moving rightward, and more people will vote tend to vote more conservatively once they have a family? Maybe that could also be part of it. Possibly.
Look, I don't think
some ideas here.
I think you boil everything down to left versus right, when in reality it's there's significantly more at bay here.
At play
here.
I think right now I'm much more into the average people with not a lot of money versus people with a ton of money. I'm really trying to create more of a class war as of now. But thank you.
I'm just saying, there was no $5,000 incentive when Alex got pregnant. If they're going to give us $5,000 to have the second kid, cool. I'll take it.
But you're going to have a second kid most likely anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. U.S. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, a father of 9, signed a memo recommending that his department prioritize communities with marriage and birth rates higher than the national average. Last month, during a Women's History Month event at the White House, Trump said, "We're going to have tremendous goodies in the bag for women, too. The women, between the fertilization and all of the other things we're talking about, it's going to be great. Fertilization, I'm still very proud of it. I don't care. I'll be known as the fertilization president, and that's okay." Noticeably last lacking from the pro-natalist proposals discussed in the New York Times piece were policies that would help families manage the demands of parenting, things like childcare subsidies, expanded access to healthcare, and more support for caregivers of disabled children. Nevertheless, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt told the New York Times that Trump is proudly implementing policies to uplift American families. So there we go. Buckle up, everybody. I'm excited. Let's move on to this next cunty piece that Politico did this week. Politico's been a real cunt this week, both locally and nationwide, which is unfortunate because I usually like Politico. But this is they did the 7 most shameless attention seekers in Congress, and our 3rd annual list of representatives and senators who just can't get enough attention from us. And it's just like, it kind of feels like gossip magazine-ish. It's like what are you doing here? Like, this is, perhaps something that belongs online, but not by you. Washington is a thirsty town. I agree with that. It always has been. It's a city full of politicians, and no one has ever won an election by staying out of the spotlight. Well, and this is so fucking hypocritical for Politico to say, because now let me see, like, I am dealing with Politico on like a daily basis running for office here in New York City because they have like local reporters and too. And let me say, I can't speak to the national reporters with the same knowledge that I can speak to the local reporters here in New York City. That being said, I always have tried to really stand up for journalists here and on this show, and I certainly don't want to get into Donald Trump fake news, the media is the devil type rhetoric on this show. But what I will say is I have been very disappointed in local journalists during this election, and how they really have been wielding their power with glee, rejoicing in the downfall of candidates, gatekeeping. Like, they have so much power, and we know the press has power, and they should, but their power should be in that they are in their ability to give the public the truth. And it's not how I'm seeing it, guys, and it's like really upsetting to me. They are playing favorites. They are following the money. They are gatekeeping, and they are telling you the stories that they want to tell you, that they think will further their careers. So just please know that. And again, like, journalists are held to certain journalistic standards, and so once again, I'm not saying that any of these people are printing lies, because I don't believe them to be printing lies, but omissions of truth or showing you a more narrow view of a situation than you deserve, that they're 100% doing, and they love it. Okay, I digress. Back to here. Washington is a thirsty town. It always has been, staying out of the spotlight, blah, blah, blah. But we at Politico magazine think our lawmakers are getting thirstier, or at least more creative in how they go after the limelight. Yeah, because they were fucking paying attention to the presidential election in 2024, and they want to start winning elections. So they need to get in the limelight. They need to get onto Instagram stories. They need to get onto Reels. They need to get onto TikToks. They need to go to places where people are actually accessing information. And unfortunately, as we get stupider and stupider, our information needs to come to us in more entertaining ways, because these stuffy articles, Politico, aren't fucking working. And you know that, and that's why in this article, all the even the art at the top of this article is a little flashier than you would normally see in a political article. It looks like freaking tarot cards. Okay, so don't play me like this. You know exactly what you're doing. There are plenty of ways to get an audience in the age of TikTok, X, with no guardrails, podcast galore, and Substack, and people are seizing the opportunity. And the Democrats fucking need to. For the 3rd year in a row, we pay tribute to those members of Congress who have once again proven that where there is a will, there is a way to go viral. Without further ado, and now here it is. So Senator Chris Murphy, the wannabe leader of the #Resistance Award. Ever since the 2024 election, Senator Chris Murphy, Democrat from Connecticut, has turned himself into the Senate's and answer to Mr. Beast, game to appear anywhere and everywhere to feed the algorithms. He has done YouTube interviews with political personalities. And they're so mad. You know what this article is really about? This article is really about everyone at the Politico office is going, they're taking our jobs. Yeah, because you're not fucking doing them properly. So we are coming for your jobs. Appeared on influencers, podcasts, and TikToks, and launched his own Substack where he has opined on everything from the political realignment to the plight of men to the much politicized one-hit wonder rich men north of Richmond. His main talking point, his argument that Trump is an authoritarian and everyone should follow Murphy's lead in being furious about the current state of politics. His more between the lines point, the Democrats are in need of a leader who can channel appropriate levels of rage, and Murphy is, in his own estimation, just the man for the job ahead of 2028. And, we see that. We see where it looks like people are vying for new roles in 2028. We talked about that with Cory Booker. We already see, many conversations about people thinking that AOC is positioning herself for that. But, well, when politics is run the way it is, based on fucking fundraising and name recognition, which I have learned in running for mayor, apparently the two only things that people even care about, which is why Cuomo is polling at 40% because people know his name. Again, you get what you pay for. You get what you pay for. You get what you vote for. You get what you sign up for. And this is what we've signed up for. Apparently, his social media followings have skyrocketed recently. His official and political Instagram accounts doubled their followings in just the first couple of months of 2025. And that seems to be the point, or a big part of it, for Murphy. He bragged to the New York Times that his son was seeing his content on social media for the first time. I'm showing up on a 16-year-old's TikTok feed. And that's how you're interpreting it. But I think, is he bragging, or is he saying, I'm making politics accessible for the future of this country, which is a group of constituents that people have not really paid attention to, and we've allowed their schools to get shut up? So what conversation are we really having here? We see the stats. We see how people are voting. We see how they're getting their information. It's very clear. It's from social media and it's from podcasts. So are we going to continue to have this conversation of we're too good on the left to do these things? Or are we going to realize this is how people want to access information? This is how people have time to access information. This is the level of education that people have in this country, which is a whole other fucking conversation. And so we need to be using language that they can understand. Again, I have a college degree, and half the time I have to look up words that people are using in political articles because you refuse to speak in layman's terms, because you have to use political and legal jargon that no one fucking knows what it means. No one knows what it means. Senator Ted Cruz, the most obsessed with his own podcast award. Senator Ted Cruz, Republican Texas, represents more than 31 million Texans, but he spends much of his time focused on his real audience, the fans of his podcast. Cruz releases episodes of his podcast, The Verdict, 3 times a week, and holds forth on every topic under the sun, with conservative commentator Ben Ferguson as a friendly interlocutor. See, look, another word I have to look up. I mean, I know from the base. I just want to make sure I'm saying that right. Obviously, it's it is the ideal venue for Cruz to share his thoughts on everything from Hollywood to Hamas without interlocutor. Thank you. It is the ideal venue. And I mean, also it's literally what I just criticized them for. Have you ever heard that word before, Mike?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Is that a fun way of saying co-host?
Yeah, it's a person who takes part in dialogue or conversation.
What a dickhead.
Exactly. It's this is exactly. I literally not 2 sentences before said stop doing this, and they couldn't help themselves. Yes, do I wish that I had an American public school education that I knew the word interlocutor? Yes, I do. In an ideal world, I do know what that means. But guess what? We're in the real world, and I don't know what that fucking means. I was able to, based on the parts of the word, know in my head that it meant someone who's having a conversation from the locutor part. But that's just me breaking down words, and I shouldn't necessarily have to do that. But that's a skill that I was taught. If you don't know what something means, you just try to break it up. Obviously, I mean, everyone knows this. You just break it up by the parts of the word, and you're like, okay, well, this can, talk to, speaking, obviously. It is the ideal venue for Cruz to share his thoughts on everything from Hollywood to Hamas without any pushback. Okay, so yes, it's a way that he can talk without pushback, and as you know, are many podcasts, and that's why I think you should take them with a grain of salt, and you need to get your information from multiple sources, and that goes from everything. But also, when you're writing an op-ed, babe, you're also not getting any pushback. So. Is not a podcast just a verbal op-ed? Have we not just digitized in a different way the op-ed? Have we just not made an op-ed listenable in a car? Or while you're working out? It's the same thing. The op-ed was fucking created by journalists. So what are you talking about? He's just doing an op-ed on a microphone. Stop pretending this is something that he made up. He did not. It's a fucking long form op-ed. And it's they're saying he's doing it 3 times a week. I don't like Ted Cruz, but I think that the fact that he is speaking about political issues 3 times a week in a way that is accessible to constituents, I think is a good thing. Again, if that's the only way that you're taking in information and you're not questioning anything that he says, that's a bad thing. But I think that engaging with the public more regularly as a public servant is a good thing. He promotes his episodes constantly on his X account. He fired off nonstop posts touting his recent interview with Elon Musk far more than he promotes, say, legislation or policy proposals. And yes, but guys, also, it's what are we responding to? What do you think? Okay, so it's not like these people don't talk about legislation or policy proposals. They do. And what is getting more? What are we responding to more? So this is not just on our public servants. It's also we kind of we want a world in which all the policies and legislation that we want to happens, but we kind of don't want to be bogged down with it. We kind of don't want to hear about it because it's boring, right? So that's why he's then posting an interview with Elon Musk. That's why when we want to hear what Kamala Harris has to say, she has to appear on Call Her Daddy. Do you not understand? This is a larger conversation. For Cruz, who once had designs on being the next Ronald Reagan, it seems his focus is now on being the next Joe Rogan. Next up, Representative Jasmine Crockett, the most likely to mug for the C-SPAN Cameras Award. I really didn't like them going at my girl. Members of Congress routinely make inflammatory statements in congressional hearings to gain attention and cable news hits, but Texas Democratic Representative Jasmine Crockett has managed to become a perpetual content machine. Her profanity-laced tirades against Elon Musk. Anytime a grown adult says profanity, I just roll my eyes to the back of my fucking head. You know what? When the country is the way it is right now, I think it's okay to say fuck sometimes. Politico provide plenty of fodder for both MSNBC and Fox News. In 2023, Crockett went viral when she attacked Republicans' introduction of articles of impeachment against President Joe Biden at one hearing, holding up photos from Trump's indictment of classified documents stored in his bathroom at Mar-a-Lago. These are our national secrets. Looks like in the shitter to me, she said. Okay. Last May, she and Republican Georgia Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene got into a colorful spat during a hearing during which Crockett suggested Taylor Greene had a bleach blonde, bad-built butch body. Not long after, Crockett filed a trademark on the phrase and used it to start her own merchandise collection, branding her digs as a Crockett clapback. Okay, so I don't love that, but you know what? She's doing this to fundraise for her own campaign, I'm guessing. Right here it says paid for Jasmine for US on the bottom, which means that when you let me go to buy something, I'm sure it will say this is a contribution to Jasmine Crockett, I'm guessing, because she's using it as a fundraising tool. Yes, of course. Okay, so exactly what I thought. When you go to purchase one of the shirts, it gives the same information that it would give if you went to contribute to my campaign, and it gives you the contribution rules. So she's not starting, a fucking small side business. She is using a statement that went viral to make money for her campaign. And on a principle level, do I agree with this? No, because I don't agree with how public servants have to fundraise in the way that they do to gain attention, right? But that's not a criticism then of Jasmine Crockett. That's a that's a criticism of our entire system. And I do criticize the entire system. And I'm a part of that now. And I have to fundraise. And I hate it. I hate that I have to call Americans who are already struggling and ask them for donations. But again, I don't get press. I don't get coverage. No one talks about me. I don't get included in polls if I don't raise that money. So it really is a double-edged sword here. And you make the promise to yourself that, well, if I'm elected, I will try to redo these structures that I don't think are fair and that I don't think are working. But I have to get there and able to enact that change. And so again, I just don't think that's fair. Like, yeah, I think it sucks that we have to, how capitalist, even the election of public servants is. Yeah, I think that sucks. I think it sucks that Jasmine Crockett has to, has to copyright a saying because she knows it's going to make her a ton of money. But like, do I blame her? No, because you got to be a shrewd businesswoman too, if you want your campaign to work. And, as far as like getting money out of people, that's probably, that's definitely not going to be one of my strong suits as a politician because I just feel guilty about it. That's why I tell people, don't donate more, any amount of money that you're actually going to miss. I don't want that money because that is counterproductive to what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to make your life easier, not harder. Representative Tim Burchett, it's Burchett, right?
I believe so.
To get me to the closest microphone award. Representative Tim Burchett, a Republican from Tennessee, will give a quote to Network News, to a MAGA podcast, to a random journalist wandering the halls of Congress. He's not just voluble, he's colorful and folksy, which means that reporters are usually happy to use his takes. Again, we're going back to people want the clickable headline. People want the interesting story. So they go to the guy who says the crazy things. And the guy that says the crazy things is going to get publicity if he keeps saying the crazy things. Again, one late night when, and like, it also like this article, like as much as it's like trying to stick it to these people, it's also just proving its own point. When you act out or what they're calling acting out, you get attention, and you're giving them more attention with this article. So like if you really believed in the point you were making, Politico, you wouldn't have fucking written this article at all, and you would have done an article about 7 people who you think are impactful in politics who aren't being talked about, whose legislation you really support. That's the article you would have done, but you're a fucking hypocrite, so you did this fucking article. I'm so mad at Politico this week. Sorry. Obviously, I have to transparently give that as my own bias as the host of this show this week. So that is me. You hear it, the venom. But I do stand by what I'm saying, right? One late night when the then Representative Matt Gaetz, Republican Florida, and Representative Mike Rogers, Republican Alabama, almost came to blows on the House floor during Kevin McCarthy's contentious speakership vote in 2023, Burchett observed, people shouldn't be drinking, especially when you're a redneck on the House floor, because the quirky conservative somehow always finds himself the swing vote when his party is just short of a majority. Reporters regularly include his views in the major stories of the day. And when the news cycle is calmer, he's always willing to chat about UFOs and has suggested that aliens have underwater bases on our planet. I mean, talking about UFOs when there's been a congressional hearing on UFOs isn't as fucking quirky as it used to be, guys. Senator Mark Warner, and I'm not even really like a big aliens girly, the X-Files is my favorite show, but it wasn't like really so much about aliens. I just really liked just the part that they were like investigating, and like also like the will they won't they of the Mulder Scully romance, obviously. Although when Mulder left, I did still enjoy the show, which really speaks to how good the show was. Senator Mark Warner, the most likely to never miss a cocktail party award. Well, I mean, every industry has alcoholics. He won't show up for the opening of an envelope like his colleague from Minnesota, but Senator Mark Warner, Democrat from Virginia, still makes plenty of time to visit an endangered Washington habitat, the cocktail party. In fairness to Warner, it's easy to make it across the river from his home in Old Town to the embassy and gala circuit. Unlike his colleagues who have to fly to other parts of the country to meet with constituents, Warner's proximity keeps him in town, and attending Washington functions can mean representing the bounty of federal workers he represents in Northern Virginia. But it takes real thirst to keep showing up to the same parties and restaurants after 3 terms in the Senate. Despite his professed online stylings as a man with simple tastes, Warner isn't shy about keeping on his Senate suit into the evening and schmoozing over canapes. Hey, someone has to keep Cafe Milano in business. Okay, some fucking inside-y Washington cafe that none of us know about. Cool. Senator Lindsey Graham, the Lifetime Achievement Award. Senator Lindsey Graham, Republican, South Carolina, has been thirsty for a generation. From his start in the Senate as a John McCain sidekick to his transformation into a Trump acolyte, the South Carolina senator has always found himself in demand on Sunday shows and Senate corridors. He's an easily available quote, and he's always eager to thrust himself in the middle of any news story. In the Trump years, Graham has used cable news both as a platform for self-promotion and as a means of communicating with the ever-mercurial president. He recently raced over to the White House to go on Fox News shortly after Trump's Oval Office blowout with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. He used the appearance to both appeal to Trump's ego and urge Zelensky to cave and do whatever is necessary to appease Trump, despite Graham's long-standing backing of American support for Ukraine. I've never been more proud of President Trump for showing the American people and the world you don't trifle with this man, he said. Vice President J.D. Vance, the MVP of Mentions Award. John McCain once said the vice president has two duties. One is to inquire daily as to the health of the president, and the other is to attend the funerals of third world dictators. Vice President J.D. Vance has added a third, be a reply guy. Since becoming second in line to the presidency and president of the Senate, which is why he was allowed into this extremely competitive congressional awards roster, Vance has remained a relentlessly online poster in spite or perhaps because of his job. He gets into X squabbles with pundits. I mean, it's also like, I wonder where he learned this tactic from. Maybe the president. Democratic elected officials, and even a former member of the British Parliament. And also, I don't want to just put this on, on the right, because the left does it too. AOC often claps back on X or on Instagram, and people love it. And again, I don't think it's like I think you have to have. You can't be speaking with perhaps the freeness of the rest of these keyboard warriors. But I think, again, we're having these conversations online. And so if we're having, more and more political conversations on these social media platforms, is it crazy that politicians have started showing up there? I don't think it is. I think it's good foresight. You discuss me, he once wrote to Representative Ro Khanna, Democrat of California. And it also puts, it puts their fellow public servants in a space where, if their office isn't responding to something, if they're publicly asked a question or if they're publicly called out on something, they really need to respond. So, is it a bad thing? I don't know. Vance also, it's just funny, coming from the world of comedy where, comedians are extremely accessible artists, and we have to be accessible because we have to be accessible so that people see our work and so people buy tickets. But that accessibility also opens us up to being trolled constantly and, demands being made of us that we, speak our public, stances on political matters. So if comedians are being demanded by the public to do that, well, then certainly public servants should be, You discuss me, he once wrote to Representative Ro Khanna, Democrat, California. Vance also sometimes just trolls. It's like they're trying to make us look cool, he posted in January, along with an image of a magazine cover showing young conservatives celebrating Trump's inauguration, which was headlined The Cruel Kids Table, which we've talked about so much on this show, ad nauseum at this point, I would say. More recently, he posted a meme from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia to mock fellow Thirsties honoree Chris Murphy's comments in an interview with CNN. It's an innovative way to shape an otherwise largely undefined job. And again, who the fuck's fault is it that the vice president of the United States is an undefined job? I don't really think it's J.D. Vance's fault. I don't. The vice president probably should have more defined duties. Maybe someone should in politics should make those up for them. All right. Well, I'm really going on. All right. I really went on a tangent there. Okay, so I might skip ahead a little bit to make sure that I get to everything I need to do because we've already been recording for a while now. Okay. When did we actually start? 10:20?
Yeah, we're at 118 right now.
Okay. Trying to just keep an eye on the time. Got it. Okay. I also wanted to, when we're talking about like different individuals in politics, we don't need to read these whole articles, but I wanted to give you an update on the young people politics takeover revolution. I did mention so I have a kitchen cabinet meeting every Friday, and you call it kitchen cabinet because it could be people on your team. It's just like a small, like a small cabinet meeting, obviously, which is why you're calling it a kitchen cabinet meeting. And so it's like my advisors, my fundraising people, my campaign manager, sometimes other people, who are canvassing for the campaign show up. It depends like what we're talking about, how private the information is, we see. And so one of the people on my team, one of my advisors, I kind of, was talking about the fact that I do think that my campaign is part of a revolution. And like I said, I was like, I know that sounds like crazy to say about yourself, but I think we're a small part of a much larger movement or revolution, which is like people who do not have a background in politics, but who are, politically or socially involved, saying like, I'm fucking not going to sit back and handle this anymore. And I'm running for office. And again, we saw that with, Kat Abu-Ghazala. We saw that with we're seeing that with Deja Fox. We're seeing that with David Hogg, and how he is backing different people in the Democratic Party. So like I didn't think it was a crazy thing to say, but I think I caught him like out of the corner of my eye, like kind of covering his mouth like to laugh, and I'm just like, this is a person who I liked. Again, I don't want to like say that he was definitely laughing, but I'm kind of just like, I don't know, like obviously like you believe in me, like you work on this campaign, like this is a campaign that you're not working on for money or like prestige. You're working on it because it's something like you're genuinely interested in. And I was kind of just like if that made you laugh, then like kind of like, why are you here? Again, like I wasn't like, I can't like 100% say that that's what it was linked to, but it just seemed to me like I'm pretty like, on top of this, again, as someone that people are constantly trying to make fun of and troll, like I'm like very onto these things. But I just kind of like, I was like, it was another one of those moments where I'm like, I'll do a narcissism check, but I just don't think it's narcissistic to say that. I didn't say that like I myself was creating a revolution. I said we're a small part of this like much larger thing that's happening. And I like do stand by that. Anyway, just wanted to bring that up to you guys. But because I was just kind of like, like, is there something I'm missing? Is that like a crazy thing to say? Because I'm open to it. Like I always tell people in my circle, like if I say something crazy, please let me know. That does not, I do not give that privilege to everyone. So if you think what I'm saying is crazy, but I'm just saying it to this audience because I think like if you're sitting here and you listen to me talk for like 2 hours on end every week, there's two options. Either you listen to it because you think I'm 100% crazy and it amuses you, or because you think that I'm so crazy that I might just have an idea here. Oh, damn it. This is not letting me in this. Well, can you get into this Chicago Tribune article? I don't think you really need to. I mean, basically all it is like, so Representative Jane Schakowsky, who was the incumbent that Kat Abu-Ghazala was running against in Illinois, is apparently announcing on May 5th that she was retiring, which shows that putting the pressure on and out fundraising her, they're all making it into passing the torch along now. But I think that they realize that if they continue running, into their 80s, and that everyone's going to turn on them. And so they have the ability now to be a bit of a groundbreaker and start this trend of passing along the torch to younger public servants, which I think is what Jen Schakowsky realized. Because obviously if Jen Schakowsky wanted to retire because she wanted to retire, she would have announced that she was retiring before Kat Abu-Ghazala had time to announce her candidacy. But I think after she, sat there and watched the enthusiasm over Kat's campaign and that Kat has already out fundraised her, I think she is just, doesn't want to lose her last election, perhaps of her lifetime. And this is her opportunity to end on a high note. And Kat has
perhaps.
Well,
she's 80.
I'm saying it with.
She's done 14 terms in the House.
Yeah, I know, but we never know how long people will live. She could live another 20 years. We don't know. I don't know. I don't have Jan Schakowsky's medical records. I'm not RFK. So I think it's just, interesting. But no matter the intention behind her leaving, I think overall it's a good thing. I'm glad that she is stepping down. And then we saw also in Illinois, actually, there's a little trend in Illinois. We also saw in Illinois U.S. Senator Dick Durbin doing that. And he did a public video saying it's time for me to pass the torch. And again, do I necessarily think, that's what he really wants to do? But it has now opened up the floodgates for a number of potential successors. So again, I think we're seeing this. It again shows when we become complacent and certain people in government are never challenged, they never really think about it. They just keep running because they go, no one's challenging me, or no one with financial backing that is substantial is challenging me. So I'm just going to keep on keeping on. But when we put pressure on these people and we all rally behind new, younger individuals, we are already seeing results from that. So I think it's really, it's a cool thing.
What results are we seeing, though? We've just bumped out one of the most progressive Democrats in Congress to give way to a 24-year-old person who
26. You're talking about Jen Schakowsky. I think it's it's about people not dying in office and running the risk of dying in office, things like that.
The fact that everyone is saying Nancy Pelosi is safe.
You have a specific bone to pick with Nancy Pelosi. I also agree
she's
that's
85.
Weird. I agree that's
85,
weird.
She's been the most powerful person in Congress for 20 years. No one's talking about we need a change there.
They
at
should.
The leadership of the Democratic Party.
They should. I don't have the power to do that right now. I'm busy. I'm trying. I'm literally fucking trying.
Literally, honestly.
If there's anyone who you're going to get mad at, it cannot be me because I'm literally trying.
I'm not getting mad at you. I'm getting mad at this whole,
at the circumstances.
This idea of we're getting rid of the old guard. We're replacing them with the cool new people who are also have Nancy Pelosi's hooks in them.
Well, and they will have to prove themselves. And and Kat Abu-Ghazaleh will have to keep the hooks out of her, and we'll watch that just the same as we watched AOC and we watch these new young people. We keep an eye on them, But I also think especially when you're young, it's when I think you really underestimate how hard it is to overthrow a system. You have so much energy when you're 26, even me, so I'm 39 and I see I'm in here now. I'm in it. I'm in the trenches. I really quickly was able to identify a ton of the problems. It's the problems that I thought existed and even more than that. I'm going, you're going through the playbook in your head and you go, so I get into Gracie Mansion. How do you start dismantling this corrupt system? How deep do you need to go? Who can you trust? It's a really, really difficult and harrowing situation. It's almost like when, Donald Trump got into office and started just giving all his friends jobs. You're like, I don't like it when he does it, but if you have, there's almost something it's how else can you hire people other than people that you actually think that in real life and you trust? It's a very difficult situation. Because again, like I said many times before, it's not that I'm, becoming mayor and I'm just all of a sudden have carte blanche say over the entire fucking city. There's hundreds and hundreds of people that you would be working collaboratively with. And all those people want to be you. They want to have your job. They want to have that job and then probably a job higher than your job. Who the fuck can you trust? It's such a larger conversation about how can we change how human beings act when they are given power? That's the conversation. And a scientist needs to solve that. I can't solve that. It's a social experiment that had with a solution that has yet to be found. I was actually thinking about this a lot earlier today or earlier this week about that's what it is. We've tried it with all different groups of people. No one is safe. We say, oh, give women power. Well, women aren't safe from corruption when they're given power either. Oh, give, people of color power. They're not safe. We saw what happened with Black Lives Matter. So it's every group we say, oh, but we got to give these people power. And so to me, it's this is more of a human issue. What happens to people's minds when they are given power? And how can we better choose people who, when given power, won't go fucking crazy with it and be self-serving with it? And I don't know the answer to that yet. All right. So we go to that. Let's go to the main story of the week is going to be about RFK and his autism files. So I'm working towards that. But let's read this piece from the Free Press about the financial situation in the U.S. Is this not actually letting me access this? 1 second. Fuck. Oh, this is like a Substack, but is it gonna scroll? 1 second. Let me try it different. Let me try this on Google Chrome instead of Safari if everyone wants to know exactly the process here. Okay, the number, I forgot. Free Press doesn't really work on Safari. Okay, that's the problem. So this is the numbers don't lie. The United States is not broke. Alarmists insist, by Doomberg. Okay. Alarmists insist that the country is sliding into insolvency, but the government can balance its books more quickly than most Americans realize. I'm the king of debt. I'm great with debt. Nobody knows debt better than me, Donald Trump. I mean, I swear to God, he has a quote about that for everything. He knows everything better than anyone else. God bless. Got you 2 terms and probably a third. When private sector companies become distressed, an entire ecosystem of experts springs into action. Turnaround specialists swoop in to replace management teams, cut spending, and negotiate with creditors. A sophisticated set of tools is deployed with vigor, much like triaging patients in hospital emergency rooms. Identifying which companies will survive has enriched many a bond investor, and executives experienced in navigating workouts are highly sought after. The question of solvency is rarely clear-cut, and filing for bankruptcy is often a strategic decision. Companies can remain insolvent for some time but never file, while others seek court protection long before all options are exhausted. Deciding if and when to act is more art than science, as demonstrated by the divergent paths chosen by Ford and General Motors during the global financial crisis. The former, you may recall, had borrowed every penny it could before the crash and avoided bankruptcy. The latter used bankruptcy to right itself. By any measure, the current U.S. fiscal situation is highly distressed. Total public debt outstanding exceeds $36 trillion, double what it was just a decade ago, and more than 120% of gross domestic product. Annual interest expense is set to surpass a staggering $1 trillion. The federal deficit was $1.8 trillion for fiscal year 2024, or 6.4% of GDP. Respected analysts argue the U.S. is already in what's called fiscal dominance, defined as an economic condition that occurs when a country's debt and deficit levels are sufficiently high that monetary policy ceases to be an effective tool for controlling inflation. And I just gotta sign in because I'm not signed in here to get to the rest of this article. Oh my God, they gotta send me an email. Sorry, guys. This is more well protected than Pete Hegseth's fucking text messages.
Which, can be broken into with just a couple of glasses of Johnny Walker.
Oh, my God.
I have the article up if you want me to keep reading, just so we don't have to wait for you to sign in.
Go. Oh, wait. It might have just let me in.
Okay.
Yeah, it did. Sorry. People do love your reading, though. I know you probably were reading that.
I can read good.
Lurching rapidly towards this wall of worry is the looming wave of debt refinancings confronting recently confirmed Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. The situation was exacerbated by his predecessor, Janet Yellen, who relied heavily on short-term debt to finance deficits during her tenure. Perhaps no American president has been more familiar with the bankruptcy code than the current occupant of the Oval Office, a man who previously boasted of using such laws brilliantly in the corporate setting. To wit, the first 3 weeks of his presidency bore the telltale signs of an experienced executive navigating a turnaround with urgency and direction. Contrary to the constant constant alarmism about America's irreversible slide into insolvency, the country is far from broke. And Trump has considerable flexibility at his disposal. Let's review the options and set a few markers for success. To quantify both the challenge and opportunity facing Trump, consider that federal government outlays have skyrocketed by about 40% since fiscal year 2019. In essence, the deluge of money printed in response to the COVID-19 pandemic has been codified into baseline spending. Conversely, total federal receipts in fiscal year 2024 were substantially higher than pre-COVID outlays, making a balanced budget far more plausible than many analysts believe. Was the 2019 government too lean? Of course not. It was a bloated mess of waste, fraud, and mismanagement back then, and it only worsened under President Biden. Through this lens, the $1.8 trillion deficit seems a worthy and achievable gap to close. A popular tool used in financial turnarounds is zero-based budgeting, where every dollar of spending is frozen until it can be justified. Developed by management expert Peter Fisher, the technique is not without controversy, especially among employees subjected to this rigorous process. Taken to its extreme, all spending, including salaries and bill payments, is halted, even to the point of damaging the business and breaking contracts, and outlays are reinstated selectively and systematically. A stunning amount of what happens in business and government is simply not necessary to the underlying mission, and the U.S. federal government is undoubtedly the largest and most obvious candidate for such a reform. Purging the system entirely would be disruptive because the government has entrenched itself in virtually every corner of the economy. Its absence would be mostly celebrated, not bemoaned. Critics argue that certain expenditures, defense spending, Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, are all but untouchable, and combined with interest expenses, these outlays alone now exceed total receipts. This is nonsense. The Constitution does not mandate any of these programs, and all of them are replete with fraud and waste. The budget for the Department of Health and Human Services has more than doubled since the Affordable Care Act was passed in 2010, adding an extra $1 trillion to U.S. spending. This is despite the fact that the ACA was sold as a measure to lower overall healthcare costs. The Pentagon's budget is approaching $1 trillion and has now failed 7 consecutive audits, and the Department of Defense remains the only federal agency to have never passed one. These are scandals ripe for exposure, and Trump seems intent on doing just that, according to Reuters. U.S. President Donald Trump said he expects Elon Musk to find hundreds of billions of dollars of fraud and abuse at the Pentagon during an audit that the billionaire will lead. I'm going to tell him very soon, like maybe in 24 hours, to go check the Department of Education. Then I'm going to go to the military. Let's check the military, Trump said in a Super Bowl interview with Fox News' Brett Baier. We're going to find billions, hundreds of billions of dollars of fraud and abuse, Trump said, of the largest federal department. Even the much vaunted third rail of American politics, Social Security, can be reformed with rigor. How much of the money spent on this program annually, $1.4 trillion in 2023, is fraudulent? Nobody knows exactly, but everybody knows it's material. Every payment issued should be tied to a verified living receipt, requiring all beneficiaries to reapply for benefits. Those who truly need the money will certainly comply, but we suspect a shockingly high proportion of current payouts would be eliminated. Once receipts are verified, buyout offers could be made to all beneficiaries under a certain age, means testing could be implemented, and additional measures could be introduced to reduce costs. None of this is rocket science, and pension reforms such as these are common in the private sector. Profligate spending by governments eventually enriches somebody somewhere, and American households have never been richer. U.S. household net worth, defined as assets minus debt, excluding potential tax obligations, has grown to nearly 5 times the country's total public debt. The recent surge in net worth indicates that asset growth has continued to outpace the rise in total debt. This trend has brought the debt-to-asset ratio, a key metric for assessing household balance sheet health, down to a fresh 50-year low. The household debt-to-asset ratio stood at 11% in the third quarter compared to the previous low of 11.1% in the first quarter of 2022. The federal government has enormous taxing power and a vast resource base to leverage. Would taxing wealth directly be unpopular? Absolutely. Would doing so cause economic disruption? You bet. But one thing is certain. The total federal deficit amounts to just over 1% of the nation's household net worth, and the entire gap could be closed with an annual levy. And then there is the possibility of raising money by implementing tariffs. The U.S. reported nearly $4 trillion of goods last year and collected $77 billion in revenue, or just 2% of the total value crossing the border. Raising this revenue lever to 20 to 25% would reduce the current deficit by half. Moving from the income statement to the balance sheet, the federal government's asset values are materially incomplete and misleading. The government owns 261.5 million ounces of gold, most of which is held in secure storage sites like Fort Knox. The country's gold is marked at just $42.22 per ounce, a fraction of its present market value. Revaluing these holdings to the current historically high prices for gold could be worth over $750 billion. The federal government owns 640 million acres of land across the country and also controls a staggering 3.17 billion acres of offshore waters within the outer continental shelf. Most of this area is recorded at cost or omitted entirely from the books, a gross understatement of its multi-trillion-dollar value. However, unpopular tax increases and tariffs might be political support for cutting federal spending is quite high. While the Democrats in Washington have been howling in protest at the methods used by Elon Musk and his team, their stance is politically untenable. With each new round of exposure, calls for a genuine reckoning will only grow louder, and Trump is a master at leveraging the bully pulpit to achieve his objectives. No executives leading a turnaround is popular among employees, and Trump will certainly be despised by those whose livelihoods depend on government largesse. Considering that 92.5% of the vote counted in the District of Columbia in the last presidential election were for Kamala Harris, we suspect he will not be too bothered. Change has come for the establishment, and the smart ones will brace for impact. We'll be keeping a close watch on long-term U.S. government bond yields. If the market believes spending will be materially cut, expect rates to drop significantly, which will only make Trump's job easier. Interest payments account for half of the budget deficit, and both the Departments of Treasury and the Federal Reserve have many tools at their disposal to manage them lower. With government expenditures and monetary policy, trade-offs matter. Through a balanced combination of spending cuts, increased revenue generation, and lower interest cuts, the government could balance its books more quickly than most anticipate. Far from being broke, the U.S. government just needs a classic workout. As far as turnarounds go, this one is utterly achievable. And this is by Doomberg, who, obviously that's like some kind of a fucking name that they're writing under because they don't want to really reveal who they are. But I'm like, it's very hard when you don't know. Doomberg, who is it? And why is he anonymous? Okay, so well, they're saying Doomberg is pretty highly credible. They're rating them a 4.5 out of 5.0. But it's based on a Substack. I'm just trying to go, because I'm especially when you're talking about economy and someone making predictions about the economy or saying, buckle up and, wait for impact about this person. It's okay, well, I need to know where your bias lies and who are you and why you might have this information. Anyway, follow along if you want, but we're not exactly sure who that is. But I did think it was interesting. And, the economy and the financial state of the country is not something we often talk about most times because those articles are boring. But I thought it was important to bring that to your attention, or, every now and again. We got to keep an eye on the budge. Gotta pick this up again. Sorry, my throat, excuse me, really hurts at this point. Okay. So now we'll go into our main story, which is about RFK wanting to make an autism registry. I'm sure you've heard about this week. So I'm going to talk about two things regarding autism. First, I'm going to go into the actual story about the registry. This is from CBS, RFK Jr.'s autism study to amass medical records of many Americans. This is by Alexander Tin. The National Institutes of Health is amassing private medical records for a number of federal and commercial databases to give to Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s new effort to study autism, the NIH's top official said Monday. The new data will allow external researchers picked for Kennedy's autism studies to study comprehensive patient data with broad coverage of the U.S. population for the first time, NIH Director Dr. Jay Bhattacharya said. The idea of the platform is that the existing data resources are often fragmented and difficult to obtain. The NIH itself will often pay multiple times for the same data resource. Even data resources that are within the federal government are difficult to obtain, he said in a presentation to the agency's advisors. Medication records from pharmacy chains, lab testing, and genomics data from patients treated by the Department of Veterans Affairs and Indian Health Service, claims from private insurers, and data from smartwatchers and fitness trackers will all be linked together, he said. The NIH is also now in talks with the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services to broaden agreements governing access to their data, Bhattacharya said. In addition, a new disease registry is being launched to track Americans with autism, which will be integrated into the data. Advocacy groups and experts have called out Kennedy for describing autism as a preventable disease, which they say is stigmatizing and unfounded. Between 10 and 20 outside groups of researchers will be given grant funding and access to the records to produce Kennedy's autism studies. Bhattacharya did not give details on how they would be chosen, but said their selection would be run through normal NIH processes. Bhattacharya said the research they will back using the data will be the highest quality proposals that will range from basic science to epidemiological approaches to other more applied approaches to treat and manage autism. He also acknowledged autism's wide variation in how it affects people. I recognize, of course, that autism, there's a range of manifestations ranging from highly functioning children to children that are quite severely disabled, and of course the research will account very carefully for that, he said. While the selected researchers will be able to access and study the private medical data, Bhattacharya said they will not be able to download it. He promised state-of-the-art protections to protect confidentiality. And I mean, again, with the Pete Hegseth thing, I'm sure we're all really believing them. By bringing the data into one place, he said it could give health agencies a window into real-time health monitoring on Americans for studying other health problems too. Like, I'm not against for them, like obtaining the information, but it would have to be anonymously. Like, that's the thing. Like, it would have to be like, you can get this information if you're just doing it based on like, this is the amount of people and this is individual 1, individual 2, individual 3, but you can't like to have their name, their information, like that feels like you could do something dastardly with that. Like, why not, if it's just for the study, why not isolate the information, take it away from the owner of that information so that we don't know who it applies to, and then study these people as just individual 1, individual 2, individual 3, if like that's all you need. But maybe you need more. Maybe you're lying to us. What we're proposing is a transformative real-world data initiative which aims to provide a robust and secure computational data platform for chronic disease and autism research, he said. They are planning a rapid timeline, and that's what you want when you're doing something new. You want a rapid timeline to launch the autism
like a vaccine.
I agree with you.
Definitely want to get that in hyperspeed.
Mike, I'm not like Miss Vaccine over here. I'm not like Russia vaccine. I didn't take the fucking HPV one because it was just out. They are planning a rapid timeline. When I was like a teenager, they are planning a rapid timeline to launch the autism research using the data. He said but did not give specifics on when it would start or how long the studies would take. Kennedy last week appeared to walk back his earlier prediction that they would have all the answers to autism's causes by September. Speaking with reporters on Tuesday, Bacciara pushed back the timeline, saying that they now hope to have grants going out the door by September for the research. It's hard to guarantee when science will make an advance. It depends on, nature has its say, Bacciara said. All right, so that's that. And then, as the Fox News, I just wanted to take this other, because Fox actually didn't have an article out about this yet. They had a news clip about it, a video news clip, but they didn't have a written thoughts on this. So I pulled this article from April 16th that said RFK Jr. attributes rise in autism to environmental factors, while CDC points to improved diagnostic practices, kind of as the complementary piece to see what the right is saying about autism and RFK Jr.'s studies. Well, autism experts claim that the rise in cases stems from greater awareness and improved diagnostic testing. Department of Health, and you could also say this for the rise in other things, like the rise in the cases of breast cancer, for instance. Department of Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy shut down that idea Wednesday and instead attributed the rise in cases to environmental factors. Yeah, and then on the flip side, people would say no, but the rise in cancer is also because of microplastics, and is also because it's all those other things, and okay, so. Figure it out. Those who discount that environmental exposure is a factor in rising autism cases are engaging in epidemic denial, Kennedy told reporters Wednesday. Kennedy appeared at I would like to talk to a scientist about this. Kennedy appeared at HHS's headquarters in Washington, D.C. to discuss the latest findings on autism, included in a new Centers for Disease Control and Prevention survey released Tuesday. This, because, what we see with having this larger conversation about autism is, the left reacting angrily, as they always do, and posting clips of the cast of Love on the Spectrum being able to function. And so it's okay, I understand that you perhaps do not like the way that he is speaking about people on the spectrum, and valid. That's, kind of criticism I have for this whole administration. Even if, when they're perhaps on the precipice of making a point, they talk about it with such a lack of class that it's hard to digest what they're actually saying. But it's okay, well, you're saying you have this proof that autism is on the rise because of environmental factors. Show me the paperwork. Show me these scientists. Show me what their credentials are, and show me these studies. That's what I would say.
I also saw a bit of the flip side on Twitter of people being like, hey, for everyone who's so angry at RFK, I have a nonverbal child who it's a nightmare to parent. I can speak to it not being God's special little gift that my child has autism.
Right. I think that's an important conversation. It's kind of it reminds me a lot of how the only people, with cancer that we highlight are the people who are having a great time having cancer. The people who are I just got to get through this. I'm a fighter. And I really like including people, like Christina Applegate, who, had cancer but now has other medical issues. But, I like people who are kind of I have cancer and it sucks and I'm not learning anything from it. And fuck this. I also think I also like to hear from those people. It doesn't always have to be the story in the way that we want. And I think but it's we do need to hear from people who have experience, raising or being in a family with autistic individuals. I also had a classmate of mine in high school who had an autistic older brother who she said absolutely wreaked havoc on the family and would physically assault her mom. And I remember her saying in psychology class, and this is her words, not mine. She said, sometimes I wish that he would die because he makes my life miserable, and he makes my mom's life miserable. And I remember, just being kind of obviously it's a core memory for me. I remember that conversation, and I had never heard someone talk about someone who was on the spectrum, or, differently abled, whatever we're saying, in that way before. And I think it was really eye-opening. And I just remember being well, she's the person with the autistic brother, not me. So I guess we should listen to her, huh? Obviously, that's her experience. That's not the experience of everybody. But, you know, the conversation is not like whether or not these like children who exist like are children that we like having around. I don't think that's the conversation. I think the conversation is like, you know, should we be searching for a cure for this, or be trying to prevent this, you know, in a way, instead of just saying like some people are autistic and it's great, you know? Again, this is like we're getting into ethical conversations here. We're getting into, you know, a lot of times when, you know, you are pregnant, like they're, you know, they can do chromosomal tests to see if the baby would have Down syndrome or something. And then you have the option to abort. And some people say that's terrible. I would never want to know, you know, whatever kind of, you know, child I have is the child I was meant to have. But again, like this is like a very large conversation to have. But I think it's a conversation that, you know, individual people should be able to have about their own bodies and about their own families, not necessarily one the government should have for us. But, you know, if people, again, it's just like a very long conversation. This is coming from an environmental toxin, and somebody made a profit by putting that environmental toxin into our air, our water, our medicines, our food, Kennedy said. And it's to their benefit to say, oh, to normalize it, to say all of this is normal. It's always been here. That's not good for our country. Now, the thing that I am saying, like, obviously there's toxins. What the hell they're doing to us? I don't know that we exactly know that yet. Wait, so like, is autism on the rise? Okay, so today the CDC, when is this from? So, okay, it's April 15th. Today the CDC released new data showing that 1 in 31 children in the United States is diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, an increase from the previous estimate of 1 in 36. Okay, so that's like that's not nothing. So, at least now we're working with the fact that autism is on the rise. And then it also says that the CDC reported in 2021 that it was only 1 in 44. So when we're talking about a jump from 2021 to 2025, from 1 in 44 to 1 in 31, that is a lot. But then you go to Stat News. I don't exactly know what this is about, but they're specifically saying that it's not an epidemic of autism, it's an epidemic of need. And this article is arguing that the increase may sound scary, but as autistic adults and as parents of children with autism, we advise you to relax. There is no epidemic of autism. Instead, what we face is an epidemic of need. The main reason we are finding more autism is simple. Clinicians are getting better at spotting what was always there. And so also when we talk about the spectrum, like we're talking about people, I'm guessing like from Asperger, like it could be like light Asperger's all the way from like being, not able, being nonverbal. And we know that autism, especially in girls, is even harder to diagnose. There are several comedians I know who were not able, who knew something was, perhaps off, and they were not able to get a proper diagnosis of autism late into adulthood. I'm talking people who were like already married and had kids. And so this article goes on to explain that there is no simple test for autism. So diagnosing it requires substantial training in observational techniques. As a result, diagnosis can vary significantly depending on the population and the competence of the clinicians. The CDC reports significant variations in autism rates from state to state and even from one school district to another. Yet there is little biological evidence to explain this. In another example of the variation, prior reports found more autism in white children, which is extremely interesting. So now let me go back to this Fox News article. Even so, the CDC's own new survey...
not to be racist, though, but I mean that might have something to do with, like, in general, right? Like, white people, by and large, are going to have access to better doctors, to doctors who might be more focused on.
Well, that's not racist, and
diagnosis.
that's like financial crisis, and class crisis in the country. But additionally, I think
right,
also
but
the reason
point
for
out the effects of that is considered racist.
No, but I think additionally, it's the same reason why it's easier to diagnose in boys than in girls. It's because often these tests are done on white males, and so that is your standard. And so then when it appears in any other type of person, it's just going to be more difficult. I mean, obviously, Black people are treated differently in the medical industry. That goes without saying, and then that speaks to why Black mothers experience, maternal mortality at a much higher rate than white mothers. So I don't think, I think sometimes we think of things as racist, or we're afraid to say things because, oh no, it might be construed as racist, when it's like actually just stops us from having very necessary conversations about why people aren't getting equitable medical care. All right. So even so, the CDC's own new survey, Kennedy addressed found that autism prevalence is on the rise, and said the increase might be due to differences in availability of services for early detection and evaluation and diagnostic practices. Specifically, the survey found that 1 in 31 8-year-old children were diagnosed with autism in 2022, up from 1 in 36 in 2000. And so that could be like the types of things that you're supposed to know, learn, or the milestones that you're supposed to reach as an 8-year-old. That's when you can really tell, perhaps. Additionally, the survey determined that autism rates were far more common for boys than girls. Again, that's just something I knew. While 1 in 20 boys is diagnosed with autism, those numbers go down to 1 in 70 for girls. I know that just from years of doing Guys We Fucked and, reading how many medical practices that we use as, common, that are commonplace today, aren't as effective on women because they weren't tested and they weren't perfected on women. They were perfected on men who are not the same as women. That was a hot take that I just had there. Let's see. While Kennedy acknowledged Wednesday there may be some genetic vulnerabilities that could contribute to increased odds of an autism diagnosis, he said the autism rates spiked starting in 1989 and that some new environmental toxin must have been introduced around that time. Why are we not seeing it in older people? Why is this only happening in young people? Kennedy said. Have you ever seen anybody our age? I'm 71 years old with full-blown autism, head banging, nonverbal, non-toilet trained. Okay, well, I mean, I think, first of all, let's talk about the life expectancy of people with autism at the level to which he's speaking. And again, dude, if you were going to make a point, I don't think you say head banging, nonverbal, non-toilet trained is the way you could I'm listening to the questions you're asking and I'm taking them seriously, and then you get to that sentence and you're like, what the fuck?
Again, this is word policing, though, because there are parents who are dealing with that exact situation.
I hear you, but he's not one of them. So to speak like that is a little wild.
Yeah, but he's making the point, not talking about a 48-year-old who's super into comic books.
Yeah, but
I'm saying a non-functioning.
Yes, because when you have those qualities that he's talking about, you don't make it to 71. It's pretty obvious you die. Of severely autistic. I mean, I don't even need to. I'm looking it up, but you don't need to. I just fucking know this. Yeah, life expectancy. The range is between 39 and 58. There you go. Answered your question, which I knew off the top of my fucking head.
So yeah, that's the answer, is because they're dead.
Yeah, yes, that's the idea. You don't see old people because they're dead. As a result, Kennedy, but he's it's not a conspiracy. It's just they have a little shorter lifespan. As a result, Kennedy said HHS's studies would examine toxins, including mold, pesticides, because that's not what he's implying. He's implying that autism didn't exist in 1950. That's what he's implying. No, it existed. They're just dead now.
Well, yeah, I know my uncle would have been he would have been hardline autism. Instead, they put him in the class with the kids who were biting their own shoulders, Mm-hmm. And it's all right, there was just no services for that level of like mental issues back in the 50s.
Yeah, there was no, there wasn't a spectrum the way there is now. It was either like you're in this class or you're in the other class, And even when I went to school, it's like we didn't have nearly like, there was like basically like you were in special ed or you weren't in special ed, and like those were kind of your choices. Let's see. We're going to look at all the potential culprits. Kennedy said HHS did not immediately respond to a request for comment from Fox News Digital regarding the apparent discrepancy between Kennedy's remarks and the CDC survey. Kennedy signaled Thursday in a cabinet meeting at the White House that the administration would kick off a massive research initiative to understand the cause of autism by September. Well, I guess we'll know in the fall. The Autistic Self-Advocacy Network, a nonprofit organization dedicated to policy and legal advocacy on behalf of those with autism, pushed back against Kennedy's statements in the cabinet meeting and claimed Kennedy refused to acknowledge studies that point to genes as the underlying cause of autism. Genes, and then I also think like is egg quality like, because there are a lot of problems with like, with older people, older women having with women having children later, there are you can't argue it. Like older eggs do have more issues.
So I was talking to my daughter's pediatrician about this today, actually.
You're at the pediatrician every day. I feel like every fucking week you have a pediatrician story. Dad life.
I'm sorry. I listen when the doctor speaks to me. This was just today, so that's why it's sticking in my mind. But she was saying like, yeah, until she starts talking, I really want to chill with the like giving her more shots because. She's just concerned that, until she's like verbal, she doesn't want to take any chances. And I appreciate that. And she said, now I don't think as a doctor that vaccines do cause autism, but why tempt fate? Like we were going back and forth about a number of the reasons. She mentioned IVF becoming more popular since then. I pointed out that pregnant women stopped smoking around the time that autism diagnosis started going up. And it's
so are you pitching that we should smoke?
I'm saying it's any number of factors. Who knows which one it was actually leading to it? And I mean, it was probably like a silly little shitpost that I saw, but at the end of the day, this is another factor that no one's considering. Women drinking during pregnancy stop.
Okay, but so about this, first of all, I want to say it's older eggs and older sperm are both problems. And like, I think it's often like that burden is often put on women. And I want to like go back on me talking only about older eggs because older sperm, like, as when you're experiencing infertility, the conversation is always about the woman. And it is pretty much 50-50 is the reason why a couple is infertile, sperm or egg. And the burden is like 99% of the time put on the woman. And please know you also have to check your sperm because it could very well be you. 50% of the time it's you, in fact. And so I just looked it up, older sperm and autism and older eggs and autism. And both of these seem that, yes, there are multiple studies that suggest that that autism increases steadily with age based on mutations in egg cells that increase. They're testing more for certainly other things that I would say are, could be semi-related. And then also men, too. It says that on Healthline, the researchers showed that the chance of having a child with autism was 28% higher among fathers who were in their 40s and 66% higher for for men in their 50s compared to fathers younger than 30. So this also right here, we're going into additional reasons that this could be. And we certainly know that people, many people are having children later because of advanced science, but also just because people are, choosing careers. And again, a lot of times we're seeing households where two parents have to work instead of just one. There is no evidence that autism is actually becoming more common. Rather, we as a society are getting better at identifying it, and diagnostic standards have appropriately been widened, the network said in a Thursday statement. So basically people, in layman's terms, people who might have just been, considered peculiar, for lack of a better word before, different, unique, whatever word you want to use, are now being like, oh, okay, well, they're on like, kind of like on the tip of the spectrum, I don't know. Even if it were, however, autistic and other disabled people belong in our society. To claim otherwise and to speak as though our existence in some kind of a calamity that must be eliminated is a form of eugenics. But I think like, yes, if you like want, but I think like also like if this is a conversation that always like I found peculiar, like if there is something that could make the individual's life easier, and when you hear people with autism speak themselves or their families, like oftentimes it is an added it's an added responsibility for the family that sometimes becomes lifelong. And then, I mean, if you had the option, then I get like, it just seems like, why wouldn't we? I understand they're saying like it's not a sickness and it's not an either or. It's not like autism is beautiful or autism isn't, or that people with autism should get less opportunities in life. It's just about like, if we have the chance to give someone a, quote unquote healthier like lifestyle or more opportunities in life, wouldn't we want to? Again, this is a more of like an ethical conversation, but I think we're only hearing from people, like you said, who might have a positive experience with this, and obviously we are not hearing from people who are nonverbal. But again, we have to like say it in a nicer way. But
Corinne,
I agree.
Of course, we're not hearing from the nonverbal.
I know. Yeah, I know. That's why I brought that up, like kind of like as duh. I was saying it like that. Oh, Jesus Christ. But again, like, this is the problem with the left. We like no one wants to have it. We want to have conversations about how, being fat is fine. It's not something that we need to fix. Yes, it is. Look at the heart disease rate. Look at the correlation between weight and heart disease. Like, stop fucking around here. I don't know. It's an impossibility. We have to be able to have conversations that are difficult and or offensive. But I think like when we're making public proclamations, perhaps we don't just say, headbanging. Anyway, that is the show for today. Oh, that was fun. I had a great time. Thank you so much for joining me. Again, if you want more information on my personal campaign for mayor of New York City, it's CorinneFisher.com. If you want to sign up to be a part of the Patreon community, it's patreon.com/withoutacountry. You get one free video not free. You get one bonus video news story every week. You get my undying gratitude. You get a thank you when you first sign up and a shout out on air. So thank you so much for being a part of it. I appreciate you.
Thanks, bitch. Have a great day.
And if you want to email me anything, it's withoutacountrypodcast@gmail.com. Please make sure you are subscribed to my YouTube at Without a Country. I'm on Instagram at Without a Country Podcast. You can also follow my mayoral campaign on Instagram at Corinne Fisher for Mayor. Mike is at Them Harrington. And Mike, do you have any shows that you want to promote?
Yeah, May 3rd, I'm going to be in Perryville, Maryland. I got Greg Stone headlining.
So funny. Greg is so funny.
Dude, Greg is incredible. I'm so hyped for this. Greg Stone, Naeem Ali, Ryan Shaner. Best ticket you can possibly get in the greater Perryville, Maryland area.
What? And that's a guarantee. That's a guarantee.
That's Saturday, May 3rd. Heading over to fifthcomedybrewing.com for tickets. And then I got two big dates, 17th and the 23rd, Armored Combat. 17th going to be back in Perryville. And
You're the king of Perryville.
Yo, America, I'm thinking about running for mayor.
I think you should.
I'm already part of the top podcast in the Perryville fire department.
Absolutely.
So I feel like I can get a large groundswell to be the corrupt mayor of Perryville.
You know what? I'll manage your campaign, Mike.
You know all about it now.
I do.
I can take the lessons you learned from this and take it to Perryville.
Apply New York City politics to Perryville, and you're unfucking beatable.
Guaranteed winner.
Yeah.
17th in Perryville, 23rd at American Dream Mall, your backyard. Gonna be a lot of fun. I'm excited for that one.
I love American Dream Mall. Why is it my backyard?
Because it's Jersey. It's the best mall in Jersey.
Oh, I thought you meant I was like, my apartment's not near there. Okay. It is a pretty cool. You can Uber there though from the city. It's not even that expensive. All right. So I want to give. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, and then just remember the next day after you go see Greg Stone and Mike in Perryville, you want to head over to New York Comedy Club East Village 7 p.m. and make sure to buy a ticket to my Politics Doesn't Have to Be a Drag benefit show, which is drag and stand-up comedy. Again, please buy those tickets in advance because I really want the money to work towards the public matching funds, and that ends on April 28th. So please buy in advance if you can. Tickets are only $30. You just click on the link and it asks you to make a donation. Please make a $30 donation for every seat you expect to have. We will only be reserving one seat for every $30. Again, it's the cheapest political fundraiser that no one's doing it. This is literally like at cost because I got to pay for the venue. So please make sure to donate at least $30. And if that's too much for you, totally get it. Then there'll be other events where you could just like see me on the street and I'll hand you some literature or something. Meaning campaign literature, not like a copy of Pride and Prejudice. That being said, that is our show. Thank you so much for being a part of this community. I appreciate you. Have a great day. Peace. Bye.